when I visited Kensington, you talked about there's a lot around kind of teacher performance management that you stripped away. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have onerous monitoring or observations of teachers in your school. And so my question is, how do you know your staff are doing a good job without, you know, lots of learning walks, lots of observations, lots of kind of tick lists? Are you doing this? Is this in your room, etc.? How do you know staff are doing a good job in your school?
Yeah, so we don't have any formal monitoring of teaching and learning. I mean, it's very similar response to your how are you covering everything? My question back to everyone who does onerous learning walks, observations, data scrutinies, etc., is how do you know the teachers in your school are doing a good job? Because you don't, you know, and that's the thing. You can, you know, if you can go in and see a good observation, you know what you found out through your learning walk, you know what you found out through your book scrutiny, your planning scrutiny, but do all of those things genuinely add up to really effective teaching and learning? I would suggest in the vast majority of cases, those two things do not equate. And really that was kind of where we got to with it. You know, we were putting in all of this time and energy into observations, into learning walks. We had evidence trails, we call them, a week where you'd look at a particular area of the curriculum or the school and, you know, speak to children, parents, staff, look at data, look at books, look, you know, all the rest of it. There was one point we had, I think our data report at its height got to 60 pages long at each half term, you know, and we were putting all of this time and energy in, and ultimately we didn't necessarily know our school any better. Ultimately we didn't necessarily know that our children were learning any more effectively. But what we were doing was creating a huge amount of workload and a huge amount of stress and anxiety. First and foremost, how do I know that my teachers are doing a good job? Well, I trust them. They're trained professionals. They are highly motivated trained professionals. You know, they are not just trained professionals who turn up to work to tick a box. They are people with a moral calling, driven to do the best that they can do for the children at this school. And so I trust them to do that job. You know, I speak to, I'm sure you do, I speak to so many friends who just are incredulous at the accountability and monitoring culture that we have in schools, who just flat out say, if that was my job, I wouldn't do my job. How do their managers know that they're doing a good job? They trust them to do a good job. And they, you know, we all have measures. We have measures at the school. We have, you know, we talk to parents, we talk to children, we talk to our team all the time. You know, we're there to support our team, to work with them. And part of supporting them is that we're in their classrooms. We're, you know, my team are teaching a bit of the lesson so that my teacher can work with a group, or, you know, they're working with a group while my teacher's talking it, or, you know, they're talking about stuff in PPA or in phase meetings, or having those, you know, all of that support is part of that. But, you know, all of those things show us that we're doing a good job. You know, Ofsted came. We're accountable to Ofsted. We're part of a, you know, a much wider system. We kind of, you know, some of the awards and accreditations you talked about, you know, some of that's about giving recognition to this little primary school around the back of East Ham Tube in Newham, in East London, and that's great for the community. But some of it's also about us measuring ourselves against external benchmarks. You know, we're a flagship school for the Inclusion Quality Mark. Big part of that is we don't want to be in our own bubble. We are confident that what we're doing is right for our children. But, you know, getting somebody else to come in and scrutinise that, someone who goes to lots of other schools and says, yeah, actually what you're doing is really fantastic. You know, that's all part of that measure. That, you know. And do we know our school any less? Do we have any less idea of whether our children are learning or not? No, Absolutely not. We've got a great culture. The fact is that not having that level of accountability means everyone's really open. It means that when my teachers feel they need support, they come and speak to someone and say, I need some support with this. It means that we can have those conversations. It means that there isn't that fear. It means that, that communication up, down, left, right, that flows constantly. And so we've got a really good understanding of where it's working and where it needs further support. And the fact is, it's never a done job, is it? So we're always growing, we're always learning, we're always improving, and that's for everybody all of the time. But what it has done is massively increased people's well-being. It's massively increased the time we've got to do the things that matter, because all the time that you spend weighing the pig, you're not doing anything to fatten it. So it's like the summative formative assessment bit. We do almost no summative assessment. Because that's not what's going to make the difference to our children's learning. Where we focus our time and energy is on that formative, is on the AFL, because that's where we're going to make the difference to our children's learning. And the same with this, we're not going to make the difference to our the quality of teaching and learning in this school by constantly measuring it. We're going to make the difference by going in and doing something, by working alongside those teachers, by sharing experience, by sharing knowledge, by getting conversations going about pedagogy, about practice, about how we learn, about the challenges that we face and how to overcome them. That's how we move things forward. We can measure that as much as we want, but actually it doesn't really help us at all, unless we're just doing that to define what it is we need to improve. But we could do that through conversation. Teachers are incredibly reflective. They know that better than anyone. And that, that freedom, that autonomy for teachers to be able to go and do what they want in that supportive culture. So it's not just go in your classroom, shut your door, good luck, we'll see you in July. It's we're here, we're all in this, one of our strategic goals is all in this together. We're all here to do what we can for these children. You've got your role in that, everyone else has got their role in that. But working together on how we can improve and how we can grow is considerably more important than going in and measuring in some way that ultimately doesn't measure it. Observation, a learning walk, a data scrutiny, a book scrutiny, whatever. Ultimately doesn't measure what your children are learning. It doesn't measure their day-to-day experience. It doesn't give me an empirical outcome that says, yes, you are doing a good to medium job, or you are doing an outstanding to good job. It doesn't really.
And I guess as well as improving staff well-being, it frees up time for yourself and your senior leader colleagues if they're not having to do this ridiculous, again, it's part of the big lie, this big charade of measuring and monitoring and knowing you're doing a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can focus on what matters, which is working with people, supporting people, and innovating, looking at things and thinking, right, how can we do it differently? We've got the capacity for that because we're not producing endless reports and endless, feedback and how overwhelming that is. I mean, again, how many teachers you've got, currently you're working on 7 improvement targets. Because the head teacher came in and did an observation and gave you 2 things to improve, and then the English lead did their scrutiny and picked up on 2 things, and then the maths lead dropped in, that was another 1 thing, and then your whole phase is working on improving music as part of the school development plan. Oh, but hang on a second, you're already working a 40, 50, 60, 70 hour week just to do everything that you're supposed to do, and maybe you've got time to improve 1 thing, but really you're going to struggle with that. But you've got 7 things on your list to improve on. Well, no one's going to improve on 7 things. So yeah, it's all. Sorry, I feel like I'm one, but it drives me mad. It's just mad. It's so unnecessary, and it's just such a, it's such a negative driver of well-being in schools. And I think, if we got rid of all of it tomorrow, we would lose very little, and we would gain a huge amount of time, a huge amount of commitment, a huge amount of energy, a huge amount of stability in the workforce, of retention. you know, so many things.
They tell me life is beautiful.